Hello, everybody. Episode 23 of the Two Russells podcast. And I hope you all enjoyed Rob Jupp. That was quite a fascinating story of success. I'm wondering where that's really going to go in the next 5 years. Russell, what's your view?
Well, I think, look, he's been at it a while. Obviously, it's his second time round. I suspect, like most people, it's natural. And it's funny because this segues nicely to our next guest. It's funny that he'll probably be looking for an exit, won't he?
I would imagine he would be looking for an exit. And
Talking of which.
Yes. Talking with our next guest, episode 23. Welcome, John Ennis, Chief Revenue Officer for Lomond, to the Two Russells podcast.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Lomond, tell us about it.
Lomond is an incredible place. It's on an incredible journey, and we're having a lot of fun doing what we do. So
you acquire lots and lots of... Is it fair to say, and I know probably you would say this, but I think this is true, that you are the most prolific acquirer of estate and letting agents in Britain?
I'd put us right up there. Yeah. I think, Confucius would argue, he who laughs last can laugh loudest. And what is nice for us is to have the chance to have a look at where we think a estate agency could be, where it has been, and look at where there's gaps, errors. Could this industry be improved? I think we could all find 10 reasons how this industry could be improved. And we're on a bit of a journey to try and achieve that. And we've been delivering some great results.
And as I was just waiting for this podcast to start, I had a news alert from Property Industry Eye. You've acquired a business today as a
live event.
Yeah. We record on. What they told me today. Okay, news track 16th.
16th of January, but it is almost a weekly activity, isn't it, for you?
8 months I've been in the business.
65 acquisitions in 3 years?
15 for me, 65, about to hit the 66th. Yeah. So, but
it's very impressive.
Pretty busy. And M&A is pretty intense. So to do that volume is a lot of late nights.
Predominantly letting agents. Is there a philosophy there where estate agents you see perhaps as not quite as exciting as letting agents going forward?
I think the non-cyclical reoccurring revenue is important. It's important to us. It's important to looking forwards, etc. So letting certainly can give that. Someone once asked me when is the best time to sell, and I think there's certainly an argument that there's a lot of risks coming into this marketplace, even for lettings, landlord attrition, extra governance, etc.
Renters' right, yes. That's all I keep hearing is renters' right. Is that not putting you off?
I think it's putting a lot of our people off. I think but equally, it's also creating a lot of opportunity where some sellers are going, do you know what? We need a lot of extra people to stay still, let alone grow forwards. So a lot of people then turn to us to say, you guys have got the knowledge, the skills, the appetite to sort of do something right with this. And so we've been able to achieve some really good results.
So do you think 2025, for a whole bunch of reasons, so that collision of kind of politics and the economy, obviously the economy has been under a big question mark, I think it's fair to say, over the last few weeks, particularly what's happening in the financial market specifically. Do you think that will trigger more sellers for you to see opportunities in this year than perhaps even last year? Because 2024 was a big year for M&A.
We've seen that. I think we've also seen the sheer number of people who peeled away in the 90s, early 2000s to launch their own agency. Some of those have now got to an stage where they either want to retire, or the value of their business means X, or something's happening in either health, wealth, retirement, call it what you like. And now there's a wonderful opportunity that their 2 decades worth or 3 decades worth of hard work can be realised.
Yeah, as a pension. Almost.
As a pension, at a time where they can then go off to still enjoy their energies, etc.
Fruits of their labour, yeah.
Fruits of their labour, yeah. There's lots and lots of businesses which would love the romance to sell to somebody in the business, but do they have the funds to do that? And there's lots of businesses which are going through MBOs, management buyouts, but raising funds and raising capital is not always that easy when interest rates are X and appetite from lending is Y. So.
And if you look at Lomond, just sort of peel back that onion for us. So there are lots of people who know who you are. There's equally lots of people who don't know who you are. So who are Lomond?
And talk about some of the brands that you've acquired, which obviously most people watching and listening would have heard of.
Lomond came together in its current guise in 2021, which was a combination of LDC, the private equity firm, coming together with Linney & Simpson. Mm-hmm. They then went on a program of M&A acquisitions, grew footprint across Yorkshire, Manchester, up to Scotland, into the Midlands. We've now got some of the largest brands with the highest market shares in the whole of those big
DJ Alexander,
DJ Alexander in Scotland, Linney & Simpson in Yorkshire, Thornley Groves in Manchester, John Shepherd across the Midlands now. Birmingham's gone over towards Nottingham and Derby. We then went down to the south coast where we own Brand Vaughan, Michael Jones, so Brighton, Worthing, Beals, and Charters.
Over in Southampton.
But you've had some big acquisitions over the last few months. So
big
Mars
acquisitions.
Bar,
Mars and Bar down in Kent, and then we just did another one in Kent. KFH, Kinleyfolk and Hayward, along with Chase Evans as well. So a big international footprint.
I didn't see KFH coming, I must admit.
And you were the predictor last year, weren't you?
I predicted
2024 would be the year
I predicted there'd
of
be
mergers and
huge M&A, and I was right. And it was led by you guys. But, in fairness, also a bit of Dexter's, a little bit of Foxton's, I suppose. We'll come back to the Foxton's things. Obviously, that's in your history in a second. There was a lot of activity. Is there a typical business that you need to fit a specific template? And I guess maybe the other question is there a type of business that you wouldn't be attracted to? So what does it have to look like? So someone listening to this now who's got 6 Essex estate agency branches, half income is coming from sales, half is coming from lettings. Is that the kind of thing? I mean, is there a geographic preference? I mean, how does it work?
Really good question. They're all different, and equally, even when you bring them on board, every piece of M&A is different. There's a set of formulae that works really, really well for us.
Which secret sauce?
Yeah, secret sauce is lots and lots of tenancies, lettings. Lots of those being managed rather than just straight let only and bit of rent. So those bits are really, really important. Number of branches doesn't really matter to us. Being able to put it into what we call a sort of hub brand, anchor brand, which can support it, is really, really important.
So you change the name of the business to one of your 12 major brands?
Typically, yeah. Some of our regions actually have 2, sometimes 3 brands that operate within them. It might be a really strong student brand. It might be a Yorkshire Dales brand,
so deal by deal.
Deal by deal, yeah. And what is lovely, we then have 3, 4, 5 key centralised pillars that we run out of Lomond. So Lomond doesn't win the listing. The local brand runs the listing. Lomond doesn't dictate your fee or how you work. The local brands do that by region. What we provide is the tech stack, the IT stack, the CRM, the L&D, the HR, and the accounts. So some centralised pillars.
So the operational discipline, but also presumably the way of running a business financially efficiently. Which is...
we give it that robust steel, that commercial edge, the extra knowledge. I mean the team of people, which is one of the reasons why I joined Lomond, the team of people, the quality, the level of expertise is second to none, full stop. The culture we've created, we've won Best Place to Work. Now, that's not us choosing that, that's our staff. And I think to win Best Place to Work is tough. To win it in a business which is doing, operating in 8 different regions is almost unheard of. To then do it with so much M&A, 20 to 25 new brands a year is
how many people
really
are there
exceptional.
now in the Lomond Group? What's the size?
With KFH coming on board, we'll be 3,000 plus, 200 branches plus, operating out of 7 really strong regions.
So where are you in the pecking order of estate agency and letting agency businesses by branch, do you think? Where do you sit in the top kind of 20 or 30, do you think?
Definitely don't want to be measured by branch for us.
But some people will.
But some people will. Yeah.
I think there's a credibility to it. I mean, you guys might not think so.
On revenue, very strong. On margin, exceptional. On profitability, very strong. On growth, huge ambition. But all of that comes from investing in people. All of that comes from investing in brands. And that's where I think we have the edge. We look after businesses really well. We invest in them really, really well. And that's time, that's love, that's energy. It means I have to be on a lot of trains to a lot of different cities around the UK. But that's really important.
And you keep the owners on for a while, or they can exit immediately?
Complete combination. Yeah, there's lots of people who want to go off to retire. There's some people who are on 6-month, 12-month service agreements. There's some people we go, we'd really love you to stay on board, please.
Yeah.
So a bit of everything.
In my acquisition world of previous, I always found it some wonderful people, and almost we reached the point of saying, they'd say, well, what would you like us to do? And it was a case of, in the nicest possible way, we'd like you to go. Yeah.
We'll take it from here.
Because it really, the staff found it hard that you'd acquired on who do they talk to. Yeah. And the owner found it hard to give it the... I wouldn't do it.
But we shouldn't, and again, we kind of glossed over it a little bit. We shouldn't understate how difficult it is to put businesses together, particularly at the volume and the rate that you guys do it. That culture difference between the business you acquire and I guess what you call the centralised business of Lomond, that's huge. Yeah. It's not just systems and technology and so on. Trying to make sure that cultures don't clash and that the acquired business very, very quickly comes on board in terms of your culture, that I have always found in estate agency a massive challenge. I mean, how have you contended with that? Because you can't tell me there's never been a problem. You absorb them and it's all great.
A Harvard
on Monday.
playbook would say culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Yes, I think it's true.
We've got amazing objectives, amazing strategy, amazing plans to deliver that. But it still involves getting around your people and talking and trying to create that culture. And, what's the definition of culture? One of my definitions is if my people are making the decisions I would make without me being there, then you're getting your culture right. If their work ethic, their talent, their productivity, their engagement is positive, you start to build the right cultures. And the growth of a big business like ours is getting that culture right. We spend a lot of time focusing on that.
I found it harder. We found it harder. The one office or two offices, and we bought some amazing 1 and 2 offices. They were the harder integration than the 8 cluster who were already used to working with a head office, already used to working with centralised services. They were like, okay, so
there's a critical mass, isn't there?
Yeah,
you can have an office with 1 neg and 1 manager. I mean, that's hard to create some culture there, isn't there? And sometimes you need a bit of clay.
So you might not want me to ask this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. There is a commonality in terms of your senior management team between you and Ed, for instance, which is a word beginning with F. Ends in Oxtons. Now, you've talked a lot about integration, culture, and so on. Foxtons, of course, still now, but famously have acquired. They've expanded quickly. They're at whatever they're at, 60 offices, now expanding outside London. How much do you attribute your Foxtons background and experience, because you were there for 23 years, I think, to what you apply now? So the question I'm really asking, John, is do you owe a little hat tip to Foxtons?
Hugely. Loved my time there. I owe my successes, my knowledge, my culture. I'm an unbelievable obsessive character and found a business which matched my obsessions to the max. It's lived through many different guises and it's embraced every one of those throughout. So I joined at the end of the 90s in Chapter A. We then went through single ownership.
Would this be Peter Tobin, Peter Rollins?
Peter Tobin's. I won't do their impressions. We'll save that for another night.
The John Hunt era.
The John Hunt era.
Peter Tobin with his Rothmans and his.
Yeah, exactly in his hands and his exactly.
Market talk.
Market. So I joined at the end of the 90s, landed in an office which I didn't know much about, never done a estate agency before.
Which one? Which office?
South Kensington.
Right, okay. Not a bad office to land in.
Not a bad office to land in. Wasn't a negotiator for long. I found the matrix very quick. As I said, I'm a bit of an obsessive and made sure I knew my register, knew my streets, knew my area, the good old art of war, know your pact, etc., better than anyone else. Could I get better than my manager at speed? That was quite a good period of time. My back 3 months, I did 45 deals, which in South Kensington is quite a lot of deals. I keep the bit of how many fall throughs I had quite quiet. But
we all do.
So I was then moved to become a lister, a valuer, which they were back then. So went to Hammersmith and Fulham, went to those offices, different manager, different style, different rhythm, different values, slightly different patch. Starting to test adaptability. Can you pivot your skills, etc.?
Are you hankering after being a manager at this point?
I had run big teams before. I had actually hankered to have none of that stress whatsoever and just leave me with an applicant box, please, and a phone. I craved just not having to manage and lead people. And unfortunately, after 9 months, they sucked me back out of that and put me back into that stream. So we obviously had a penchant for that. So I worked in Fulham, again, not for long, 9 months, and then they brought me back to South Kensington because I had a couple of plans to really double down and take the 10 offices which we were at to significantly more, and we're going to create a structure for growth. So I took over the South Kensington office in 2002. I think that pack, while I was there for 5 years, is probably a pack that now runs probably about 30 to 40% of the industry.
Yeah,
they all were.
Earlier, there is this incredible phenomenon about Foxtons, whether it's the John Hunt days, whether it's now, whatever, where the alumni as such seems to be of a different level. So the culture, the training, the systems, whatever it is about Foxtons.
And the expectation.
Yeah, takes people to a level whereby, as you say, a lot of the industry is now run by ex-Foxtons people.
We want to build in a nice structured way. We've got a good plan and a good strategy. It's got to have the right fit, the right model.
It feels like a big gap to the east of us. We're here in Stratford. It feels like a big gap in Lomond's footprint to the east of us.
London's a really key opportunity for us. And
Essex, East Anglia.
yeah. So
Watch this space.
Now he's after commission, because I know exactly where he's going with this.
No, but look, the Foxtons journey is incredible. But let's go back before that. We'll come back to Foxtons. Where did it all begin for you, John? What got you, back to almost leaving school? Where did it all begin for you?
I was brought up in a council estate in the depths of South Croydon. My parents came over on boats from India. So we had nothing. They still have nothing. We try to bring up our children to sort of be grounded. So I suppose you learn that desire to scrap and fight for everything and earn everything that ever comes to you. Nothing was given. And I think that's really, really important. I mean, when I landed...
Croydon 30 odd years ago was very different to the Croydon we see today.
At times, yeah, exactly. You learn to be pretty streetwise. You learn to hustle. You learn to talk. You either learn to run quickly, deal quickly, or talk your way out of things. So,
what did your parents do?
Dad worked on the railways. Mum actually worked at Withers in the days of proper typing. Type and move and type and move, etc., etc. So, but they brought humour, love. They gave lots of skills in other ways. I was the first member of our family to go to university. I did sport. And I think that was one of the catalysts probably to where I am today, because we learnt about high performance athletes, high performance sport. And my first chapter,
uni, because Russell's on record on this podcast that one of your biggest regrets in life is that you didn't go to uni.
It is, yeah. I would have, probably to the benefit of the property industry, taken a different path, perhaps. I would have gone into law, I think, right. if I'd been pushed and encouraged to do so, because I just have that inquisitive mind and that argumentative mind before anybody else does it. That's what I would have done. And I didn't have parents that pushed me like your parents, presumably. No, let's not say pushed, let's say encouraged. I just didn't have that. You obviously had that encouragement.
I didn't at all, actually.
Really?
They're the most passive. I think I sort of wanted to fill the space that, what were they not pushing on for? They were very happy and very content. And at times I do yoga today, and I sort of try to be more parent-like, as it were, to say, stop pushing.
Did they not necessarily see or understand the benefits of a university?
And would that be unusual in your circle for you to have gone to university from?
Yeah, and I think it almost became the sort of done thing back in those days. Everybody was going off to university, okay, and university plays its part. I think if you're doing a vocational degree, absolutely, but it does give you a lot of education into life. It's a next step and stage of not living with your parents, starting to be more independent, cook, pay bills, etc., etc. So it does fulfil a role. I have 4 children. Not all of them have gone to university. Some have gone straight to work, etc. But it does fill a wonderful educational need for, again, not just a technical or an academic educational need.
Yeah.
So out of university straight into property? Or?
Into a laboratory. So university and a laboratory, straight into a laboratory. So I worked for a company testing high performance teams, high performance athletes. We worked with varying football clubs, varying national teams, the days of Kevin Keegan and Graham Taylor.
Right. Sorry, when you say
England.
testing, do you mean performance testing, as in how can we give them that extra 1%? Or do you mean drug testing? What do you mean?
We never did the medicals for football. This was the extra 1%. Right. My timing was an absolute dog. I got into a really lucrative, exciting industry when there was no money in it. Pre-Arsene Wenger turning up in football, pre-David Brailsford turning up in British cycling. Yeah. But it was all the precursor to that, literally 2 years too early. But we got to work with some exceptional people who could run marathons in 2 hours, who could hit the world hour record, on a bike, etc. So all the sports science, which has then gone off to really transform Team GB, sport as we see it today. But at the time, there was no money in it. And so why was there money? End of the 90s, London,
but
straight
how
property.
have you used that performance tweaking in your career since then?
Ask my staff non-stop, everything from...
It's helped, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what defines me and anyone who works for me, is realising what the human could be capable of.
Right. The extra bit.
The extra bit, the extra 1%.
Yeah.
But it's finding that, what we call it the red zone, it's how far into the red zone you can go. You'll be amazed what the human can tolerate. When they say it's a marathon, not a sprint, top marathon runners sprint. They run at my 400-metre pace for a marathon. Paula Radcliffe can run faster than a treadmill can run in a gym. That's her cruising speed.
So translate that into an estate agency scenario or a letting agency scenario.
You can learn property better. You can understand your client better. You can make more phone calls. that are better, more volume, better quantity,
So you can list more,
better
you can sell
quality.
more.
Yeah, I did 45 deals in sales when I became a lister. Me and my team, Guy was one of my valuers. We took 120 listings on in a month. We took the South Kensington Register from 80 when I started in 3 negs to 650 properties.
Well, that's more than
out
an
of
extra
one
1%.
office.
More than an extra 1%.
And when we were talking off camera about you visiting some branches and just popping in, and you see somebody who is not fulfilling their potential, so how do you approach that? What's your approach
I have a
to that?
glitch. I have a lot of glitches. I have a glitch which I can sort of tolerate people not being excellent. I can't tolerate people being lazy, because if they're not excellent, you can train them, help them, support them, encourage them, give them a push, give them a carrot, put your arm around them, whatever it might be. You can coach them. And coaching is super important for any member of staff. Coaching my CEOs, coaching my heads of sales, heads of lettings, it's fundamental. I've always mentored people. I've always supported people. I've always looked to stretch, guide people, and then give them space. And I still do that today, whether that's the person on the front desk, sitting amongst property managers. I like to sit amongst staff all the time. People sort of worry when I sort of turn up in a building and I sort of just sit on an empty desk.
But would you tackle a neg or a lister, or given that you've got managers of branches that report to CEOs that report to you, so you're kind of 2 or 3 tiers up in the pecking order of management, would you tackle someone if you saw that they, let's say, dropped something on the floor and walked off, or you heard them on the phone saying, what, 4 o'clock on a Saturday? No, I'm sorry, we'll be closed. I mean, stuff that I'm sure that you would...
Can't stop myself.
Right. Okay.
Can't
So
stop
you
myself.
go direct.
Yeah, I straighten chairs, I tidy up offices, I'll pick up the phone. If the phone's ringing, I'll answer it. You name it. I try not to do a lot of it because I have to swim up.
Yeah.
But staying plugged in and connected is what gives you the edge.
And hoping it rubs off.
Hoping it rubs off. Well, you start telling someone, before you know it, 3 or 4 people are listening. And before you know it, you can then go to your heads of sales or your manager and going, why am I having these conversations? And then I'm a great believer in iceberg management. You only see the tiny tip.
Yeah.
So if it's wrong in Office X, it probably could be wrong in all other 7 or 8. And then you grab people together and then you say, this is the level I'm expecting. These are the things we need to cover.
Yeah.
We do a lot of what we call teacup training. Anyone who's
Think
worked for
correctly
me
under pressure.
get
Mr. Woodward.
bombarded with teacup training for me. And we do.
Sorry, what is teacup training?
Think correctly under pressure.
Okay.
What do you do when someone says X? What do you do when someone says, well, I don't want a board. I don't want to pay your fee.
Yeah.
I'm not ready to exchange. Whatever it might be.
Yeah.
We put, questions, 30 questions, and I'm going to say, pick a number, and I'll ask you a question. What's a sinking fund? What's this? What's that? What's lettings?
So advanced prep of those situations.
Advanced prep, but you should have them at the front of your head. They're only going to ask you a question that's relevant for that time.
There's only going to be a certain number of questions they can ask. And
That's one of the most fundamental things of sales.
Yep. And therefore you should have an answer because you should know what they're going to ask and be prepared. Can we just move on, though, to Chestertons and you leaving Chestertons, if you don't mind me saying?
Yep.
Because I hear on the grapevine that a lot of people think that was a mistake.
For me or for them?
For them.
I'll let them be the decider of that. I had done a lot of M&A at Foxtons, including the sale to BC Partners, including the IPO. I was part of that team for Hunt and that team for BC Partners to deliver on that. We then did a lot of M&A while we were at Foxtons, and the chairman had a couple of failed sale attempts at Chestertons and wanted me to come on board. What was lovely is Guy was there. The cupboard was full of the right ingredients, which is really lovely. Sometimes I have to go shopping for new ingredients. They were all there. And I suppose a bit like a head chef, it just needs to be used in a different order. And one of those was to realise it doesn't need to revolve around the leader. So it was actually pulling up the senior team and, sounds strange, making yourself dispensable. Because then they're buying the business that can continue, not the individual leading it.
So you weren't needed anymore. But who thought that? You thought that, or they thought that?
A bit of a combination. We sort of positioned it that the business could be built on and run, and it's a belter of a business. So I think
Great name, great brand.
Brilliant brand. Yeah. But look, if you don't mind me saying, a lot of people I speak to say, why was he allowed to go? That should never have happened. So I mean it as an absolute compliment.
Thank you very much. Lomond's benefit.
Yeah. And looking at the future, and looking at everywhere I read in 2025, everyone's talking about tech, AI, and how that's going to play a huge part in the property world. How do you see it, John? How do you see AI and tech enabling
I think it's
estate
really,
agents and ultimately a better customer experience.
I think it's really, really significant. In my times where I wasn't working, a lot of people wanted some consultancy, and I wasn't able to do consultancy for estate agents. But I did dive into tech, AI, some stuff in the US. I did some, which was really interesting to see what's happening there, different models, how they utilize technology. Did some stuff with hedge funds in the city and insurance, just to sort of, again, see how those businesses work. So I can't sit at home and do nothing. I'm a bit of a workaholic there. So I think it will play a huge, huge part. I think there's a lot more high volume, low value tasks that AI could do. I still think we're a bit of an industry which involves a human turning up at some point.
Yeah.
And I therefore think that the human needs to get through it all to try and close. Now, I think there's a better journey pre and there's a better journey post that technology can power. There's big needles in haystacks, isn't there? You know,
You still need a human relationship.
still need a human relationship, but tech and AI can get through gargantuan amounts of data to serve up the right things to the right people, and what's getting better at the right time. And that's a question.
Someone said, I can't remember who it was it might have been Buffett, you can't digitize empathy.
Right.
So it's the one thing you can't digitize yet.
Where it's wrong at the moment, the finite number of people who are doing it well are then pitching it to everybody. So you have a street with 30 houses on, and the one house the propensity model says is about to sell will get 20 tout letters.
Yeah.
And no one else is touting the rest because they think that's the most highest propensity.
Yeah.
So
it needs to be refined, doesn't it? It needs to continually be.
Yeah, and we're missing out on the other 19 opportunities that you need to warm up, put into your hopper, and work towards. But
And with 3,000 employees, 3,000 people in the Lomond group, increase in minimum wage, increase in national insurance, is that going to lead to less people joining the group, pay rises for everybody, cost cuts elsewhere to supplement that?
We pay well. We've increased wages. We try to beat inflation. We've modelled in national insurance, all the usuals. I think
that's a 1.2% increase, which across your salary bill is quite a lot of money.
Yeah. And we factor that in. We build that in. Interestingly, on the flip side, business owners are going, it's getting really expensive. I need more people to do more compliance. I've got to pay them more. All these part-time and minimum wage crew, should we have that conversation? And they do come back. So we're actually seeing the age of some of our sellers reduce as people are actually starting to sell their businesses
because they
a year or two. And I wonder if it's because they think they're hemorrhaging X or losing Y, or it's costing them more to do the same.
And a question that I get asked by friends who own estate agents and acquaintances and people that used to work for me went off and opened their own is what is their estate agency business worth? Is it a value on their pipeline, their profitability, or their management
revenue
turnover?
times X, profit times X. I suppose it depends on sales or lettings.
No, but I hear lots of different metrics. What
accountants will tell you one thing, brokers will tell you another thing. The blunt reality is DD tells you everything, your due diligence. There are some multiples of lettings revenue that have a factor. Sales today now, you may compensate someone for their pipeline, their under offer pipeline. A few of the buyers now don't want to and don't think they should compensate someone for their listings anymore. At times people wanted 25% for their listings and 70% for their pipeline. It actually, by the time you retain the staff to execute and deliver on that pipeline, the problem is fall through rates are high.
Yeah.
Time to exchange is long. It's actually not that cost effective to buy out. So even there, you're starting to see people paying 50% for a sales pipeline and nothing for a portfolio. But lettings is where the gold is.
Mm-hmm. And you would value on managed only or the total?
They have slightly different multiples. So we will look at what that might look like as a multiple of revenue. We'll also look at what that might look like as a multiple of profit, EBITDA. We have the benefit of saying, actually, we can actually run some of those teams centrally, marketing teams, HR teams, et cetera, and then keep all the fee earners. Try and keep the branches, try and keep the best, what's made that revenue. But some of the ancillary bits or the centralized bits, we sometimes can do centrally or do it in teams or do it with a bit of scale, which allows our post-synergy EBITDA to be a number that we often can bid on, which means we can sometimes bid stronger than others and then retain lots and lots of their staff to go and do the things they're great at: list property, sell, manage, etc., let property.
With managed revenue, which obviously is the sweet spot for you guys in terms of that recurring revenue, there's obviously a kind of multiple that gets applied to that, less a bit, add a bit, whatever those variances are. Do you think that in the not too distant future, the city and investors are going to value that multiple more? Is that why you're so intent on buying lettings businesses with managed portfolios? Because if that rate, let's say that revenue multiplier is 5x, because lettings now is seen as a kind of almost like water, electricity, gas, and so on, that multiple eventually will be higher. So when you guys decide to do what you're ultimately going to do, which I presume is a sale to a bigger PE company or a listing on the stock exchange, I'm sure you won't want to comment on that, but there's always an exit. There's always an exit. You don't run this fast for there not to be an exit. Do you think that there's a huge uplift waiting for you?
We wait to see. There's always a value creation program of what could you try and do with a business to enhance. What does the role of technology play to that? Uber's just a taxi firm, but the way they do it is they're filed under a tech form. Yeah. We're not suddenly about to become a tech firm, but I do think fees in the UK are low for sales and lettings. I think multiples are low for the sector. I think we certainly want to embark on a really strong growth curve. I think whilst we will see landlord attrition trickle out at usual trickling out rates, we've modelled that. But conversely, you'll see the number of people in private rented accommodation probably grow to 23, 24, dare I say it, 25%. Over the next period of time. Germany's up in the 40s now. Will we go towards a Germany model? Everyone in Germany wants to come back down to a
90% rented.
They want to come out of that and they want more home ownership. But I'm not saying we'll get into the 30s, but will we get to the mid 20s out from where we are 19? So how do we achieve that? What's portfolio ownership going to look like? What does the private rental sector look like? What does build to rent look like? Structural changes going on. The housing market is relatively dysfunctional, isn't it? You can argue lots of reasons why: affordability, supply, demand. And current fiscal policy, let's not make this political, current fiscal policy is actually making supply and demand worse. It's not solving what they're trying to solve.
Don't achieve their 1.5 million homes, and I'll say this, they won't, because there isn't the labour, there aren't the materials, and there isn't the will on the part of the big developers to increase their output by 50%.
Not until they get some help.
So therefore, what you end up with is an imbalance still, which, yes, it's dysfunctional, but it's actually good for agents, because of course there's always going to be that demand, and it's, dare I venture,
we have 400,000 properties with planning permission in London. And we just about deliver mid 20,000s. Of which some sell to the Far East, some get 10-year switch to build to rent, some get switched to affordable. When you deliver lots of houses at £800,000 for a 1-bed or 2-bed, it's dysfunctional.
So your model is safe, and what I'm gleaning, although you didn't say it, is yes, because of all those circumstances, you think maybe the multiples get better, which is, look, it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
All those hard-working people out there who want an exit at some point. Also, I think a lot of the builders are waiting, are hoping on this rumoured March Help to Buy parts 2, 3 or 4 to get.
But that only increases demand. It doesn't do anything for supply.
But that's what they're all hoping to get their stock.
What it does do, it provides the safety net again for the trapeze artists. It provides the safety net for the developers. And a lot of developers, when you withdrew Help to Buy, thought, we can't sell to the Far East. We're selling at a price which doesn't work for all the buy-to-let investors anymore. Who's going to buy my property off plan? Very few people did. Help to Buy only kicks in with a 6-month mortgage offer, so you could only do your Help to Buy at the tail end of the scheme, but at least it provided a safety net.
It helps confidence on the part of the developers. But I think the prophecy that 1.5 million homes will be built, and that solves the housing crisis, when 70% of all homes are built by 10 companies that are only beholden to shareholders and their P&L. They're not social entities, nor do they need to be. I mean, I say that with no criticism. If I was running Persimmon or Taylor Wimpey, I'd like to think I'd have a social conscience, but my number one responsibility is to my sharelders.
And
that's it.
You mothball schemes, you hold back schemes. We haven't hit housing targets since the 60s and 70s. Exactly that. State control.
I'm afraid it's simply not going to happen. And I think for society, that's a bad thing. For politicians that are hanging their hats on it, a bad thing. But actually, selfishly, when it comes to being an estate or letting agent, that imbalance is good.
So, as a chief revenue officer, you've got to move some dials, I imagine. Monday morning, which key dials are you looking at? What's shaping John Ennis's week? And my second question to you is, how do you keep out of the boardroom and in the branches?
Combination, so a lot of planning, a lot of triaging. I think you have to have a plan, but be ready to adapt. So I try to be at my desk in London 2 days a week, and I try to be in branch or in region 2 days a week. So the very first thing is you fix and plan. Yesterday I was down in Kent, tomorrow I'm up in Nottingham, next week I'm in Southampton, etc., etc. So just book those train tickets, just book yourself in, go and see some people. I don't like to turn up. I'm not a coffee and high five kind of guy. I think that's important, but I want to set up a meeting with 10 managers. I want to set up a meeting with 12 new starters. I want to set up a meeting with the senior heads of sales, heads of lettings, the regional CEO, whatever it might be. So you have these anchors. And then you see your staff in and around that, where you go and plot up, etc. So that way you then try and consolidate your time with the board on strategy into an intense Tuesday, or back-to-back Teams meetings from M&A, into a very concise Wednesday. But Mondays and Thursdays I try and get out and about, and then Friday I just turn up on people and just
in your gym kit, having bought the loaf of bread.
Exactly that. Sorry,
that's the weekends.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. So just get out and about and just turn up. They know I tell them, listen, just expect me to turn up. At some point. Yeah. And I think that is really important. And people get comfortable.
That's where
John will turn up, and
people listening to this might say, "Well, that's a bit unfair," but no, it's not. If you're doing your job right and everything's fine, I would welcome a director to come in at any point, because you've got nothing to hide.
It's the best part of it.
Absolutely.
For me, it was the best part of my job. Go and see the people.
We used to do call recording at Foxton's. We brought it into Chestertons. It's wonderful. After a couple of sessions of call recording, people go, "Can you do it again?"
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Let's, because you learn so much from it. There's so much benefit from it. They hate it the first time. The number of times they say, all their mannerisms that they don't like or didn't realise they were doing. And then after all, someone says, "You missed an opportunity there. You could have asked for a bit of business there. There was some gold there," etc. So, people learn by a lot of osmosis. I think it's an incredible thing to do.
Yeah. A couple of questions that you're probably not going to want to answer.
Go for it.
Is there a deal either during your tenure at Lomond or before that was the one that got away that you guys really regret?
A studio flat in Chelsea Cloisters in 1999.
No, I mean an acquisition deal, missing something that maybe either didn't get sold or got sold to another group, where you think, shit, that should have been us.
Oh, crikey, good question. I call it the dog test. I shouldn't give away my secrets. The dog test is, if the dog runs in the room, it's going to run to me. I'm going to win hearts and minds before anybody else. I can get to the price, but if the owner thinks, I believe in him, I trust him, I like him, it's the same if we go on a valuation. I'm going to win that dog test every single time. The price is separate. Right, exactly. Yeah. So today at Lomond, no, we haven't lost anything that we didn't want to win. There have been some deals where the revenue mix didn't work for us, the geography didn't work for us, and lots of things were coming to us that we just didn't have either the resource or the time frame. Loads of people want things done before a stamp duty threshold, for example. I'm quite comfortable in that. I probably wouldn't have been as comfortable 10 years ago because I wanted to win everything. Today, you sort of have to think, wait a minute, what about the sanity? Yeah. Equally, we've got some one of our acquisitions that we now need to settle into. We just want to spend all of that wonderful time. There's no point buying something and leaving it alone.
Yeah. No.
Love it, encourage it, get the most out of it.
Revenue growth.
Revenue growth. Yeah. Chief Revenue Officer focuses on organic growth and dealing with what you've got, as well as acquisitive growth.
Yeah. So the second question then is there a deal that you would really want to do this year? Is there a particular target, and I shouldn't use that word,
that smile says it all, doesn't it? Exactly. I think
question answer.
How long have we got? Can we get an extra hour on this podcast?
They are sellers, I reckon, because you're talking to them already. You've heard a whisper that fits. We've got to try and do that deal.
There are.
Maybe try and talk about them without telling us their name. But maybe
we I suppose on a macro level, we want to do more within the regions we're currently in, to join those dots up. But equally, you can only receive a certain number of businesses into a region. So I couldn't do 6 pieces of M&A for brand X. They'd take their eye off business as usual. Yeah. They'd take their eye off their staff. They'd spend their whole time making sure the new acquisitions land.
So region, it has to be layered in.
So it's got to be layered in. And each region, depending on the size, the geography, the complexities, can handle a different amount. Could they handle 1 per quarter? Depending on the size and complexity. Could they just handle 2 per year? Depends on the size and complexity. So certainly from our side, there's desire, there's appetite, there's funds that we could go and have a very strong year again. And we'd like to, but we need to think where, how, etc. So if it was just purely our agenda, great. But then you've got brokers, you've got fiscal policy, you've got taxation, you've got vendor motivation. Yeah. So things come to you and you think, Any chance you could wait till the back end of this year, please,
black
or
swan moments.
etc.
Yeah.
But equally, we often say to vendors, listen, I'd love to sit first slip. When you're ready,
just in case.
Please give me a call. I'd love to do this business. I'm very, very transparent. The number of people I said, I'd love to buy a business. I just can't do it now.
Today. Yeah.
And I have a finite resource of an M&A team who can only handle X number of files at any one time. It's like a lawyer. They can only handle a certain number of deals at any one time.
As we film this towards the middle end of January, you're at 65 deals done so far over 4 years.
Yeah.
Is the ambition to get to 100 by the end of 2025? Or do you not think like that?
Not on number of deals, no. Would we like to get to 120,000 tenancies? Yes. Would we
do
like
the right
to,
deals that take you on that journey?
Will we look at new regions over the next 12 to 24 months? Yes, but we're driven by data. We run our own proprietary CAT scoring. We look at where there's strong private rented sector, where there's density, there's letterboxes and chimney pots. We look at where there's strong rental markets. We're not a rural estate agency. We don't want to go to, and the UK goes green very quickly, so we don't want to be in the middle of, fields and gorgeous parts of the UK. We like cities, we like chimney pots, we love rentals, students, those sorts of things. So where we exist today is really, really good for us. We could continue and hit our growth plans just on where we are today, but we will look at increasing our densities. And will we look at increasing our geography? There's certainly appetite.
Sounds like it's going to be a big year in 2025 for Lomond.
Exciting.
I hope so. We enjoy taking the time to enjoy the journey. We're very clear on where we want to be in terms of a destination, but it's nice to see everybody and making sure everybody gets to enjoy that journey. And
if somebody wants to find you, I know they can find you, but just help them. How would they get in touch with you,
John? Reach us out at email addresses. Reach out through the website, LinkedIn. We're very happy to talk to people. We have a lot of exploratory conversations of people who aren't ready to sell, who ask questions of what that look like. We sign lots of NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, just so that sometimes a bit like when you have a valuation of a house. I know you're not ready to sell, people. But if you send me X, Y, and Z, I can tell you today it would be worthwhile. And equally, almost in terms of consultancy, you're almost sort of saying, if you did X, Y, and Z,
you'd make your business more valuable.
Yeah, and more attractive to us.
And we might want to talk to you in a year's
time.
And
then, to go and
almost a desktop val.
Like a desktop val. Will there be an algorithm for that too? Who knows?
Yeah. Well, it's all lead gen, isn't it? And nurturing for as long as it takes, right? Just having a medium to long-term horizon, which you must have to have. Yeah.
What a fantastic story.
Brilliant.
Fascinating.
It is.
John, thank you so much for coming on today. I'm sure there'll be a few people finding their way to you to get that desktop val and find out what their business is worth, because there's a lot of people out there, haven't there, that I think haven't got an exit, or maybe they've not got someone that's going to take over their business. They can't do the MBO. So definitely, I think you're going to
need to have a conversation about how we weave our commission into this conversation and all of the leads that John and his team are going to get thereafter.
I'm sure that's what
I think there's three bits of strategy. Everything you buy, you need to work out what is your exit strategy, don't you? And then how do you hold it and for how long? And I think it's always important to have an exit strategy.
Great. Lovely. Well, thank you. That's it. Episode 23 of the Two Russells podcast. We move on to episode 24. Again, a fascinating man who has built his business, but also now wants to give a lot back, particularly in the space of mental health, where men are concerned.
Give a clue? He wears a helmet with thorns.
Horns. Yes. The Viking arrives on the Two Russells podcast. But just for now, it's good night from me.
And it's good night from him.